I made up my mind he would take care of Virginia for the rest of her life. One day, she dropped by my place after running errands. "Virginia, let's stay at this hotel until our new place is ready. It'll be a bit cramped since we'll share a room for now, but bear with me, okay?" She hesitated. "I don't mind that, but do you think we'll be all right? Those kids might try to track us down again." I smiled reassuringly. "Don't sweat it. I won't let them push us around anymore." For a while, things were quiet, but then, as expected, about a month later, Bonnie called frantic and furious. "Hey, what the hell is going on? We've been thrown out. This is Wesley's house, or wait, it's in Mom's name, isn't it? You can't just kick us out like this." Her voice was shaky, completely caught off guard. The counterattack had begun. "Actually, the house has been in my name since I bought it," I explained calmly. "I have no plans to live with you two, and if I can't live there, there's no reason to keep it, so I sold it. The new owners are expecting you to vacate. Please leave as soon as possible." But where are we supposed to go? We have nowhere else. We're unemployed. We have debts. You can't just kick us onto the streets," Bonnie pleaded. I scoffed. "Excuse me, you threw me out first. Remember, you said something like, 'When will you stop mooching off other people?' But I left without a fuss. Why don't you to check into a hotel or something?" "I'm telling you, we don't have any money." Bonnie's voice cracked. "Where are you? You're with Mom, aren't you? Put her on the phone. We won't survive without her." I figured they must have racked up serious debt, probably with collectors already circling. "That's not our problem," I said, my patience wearing thin, "and frankly, could you stop pestering Virginia? We both know you've nearly drained her savings. From now on, stay out of her life." How can you be so heartless?" Bonnie stammered. For the first time, my sister-in-law, who had been so smug and domineering, sounded genuinely desperate. Then, her voice broke completely, and she dissolved into sobs, babbling apologies. Virginia, who had been quietly listening, let out a long sigh. A mix of frustration and exhaustion clouded her face. Then, finally, she spoke. "Bonnie, if you think you can keep depending on me, you're sorely mistaken." Her voice was steady but final. "Remember, when you used all of your father's life insurance to pay off your debt, you swore you would make the same mistake, yet you gambled again. You hardly worked, expecting me to clean up your mess. Well, I'm done. Don't ever contact me again." "Mom, no, don't say that. Please don't be so harsh," Bonnie wailed. Her tearful pleas spilled through the phone, but Virginia didn't waver. Without hesitation, she ended the call. Then, she turned to me. "Jasmine, let's block her number. If she keeps pestering us, it'll be nothing but a nuisance. She clearly has no intention of changing so annoying." For the first time in a long while, Virginia's face looked lighter, as if an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She had finally said everything she needed to say. Of course, Bonnie didn't give up that easily. Once she realized I had blocked her, she went into overdrive, calling Virginia, trying to reach me through Wesley's still active phone, even messaging us on WhatsApp. When that failed, she turned to extended relatives, playing the victim, begging for financial help. But our family members knew better. After years of watching her cycle of reckless gambling and borrowing, no one was willing to be her safety net anymore. With nowhere left to turn, Bonnie and Malachi were forced to face reality. They ended up working low-paying day jobs just to get by, spending their nights in a park until they could afford a cheap apartment. For years, they had strutted around with arrogance, treating us like their personal bank. Nah, they were nothing but a sorry sight. Virginia and I had no sympathy, no plans to help. They had made their bed. Nah, they had to lie in it. A month passed. Slowly, I came to terms with the harsh reality of my husband's death. It still hurt, but I knew I had to move forward. I returned to work. My coworkers noticed how much weight I had lost, but I reassured them I was doing better. And every evening, when I came home, Virginia greeted me with a warm smile. It was comforting, safe. Maybe our situation was unconventional, but it didn't matter. I had lost my husband, but I had gained a true family. And as long as we had each other, I knew we'd be just fine. Maybe that's why he was always scraping me, always complaining about being broke and hungry. Wesley had tried to talk sense into them before, but it never worked. In 3 days, it's payday. They'll definitely come knocking, Virginia said, her expression unusually firm. I really want to stop them this time. Wesley considered taking the day off to confront them, but his workload made it impossible. Then I'll stay home instead, I suggested. No way am I leaving you to deal with them alone. If they start asking for money, I'll handle it. And so, we carefully planned our response. Sure enough, 3 days later Friday, Katie, Bonnie, and Malachi arrived right as we were in the middle of making lunch. Hey, Mom, we're home, Bonnie called out. We're starving. Got anything good? Just whip up something quick, okay? Then, she spotted me and frowned. Wait, why is Jasmine here? Aren't you supposed to be at work? Took the day off to spend time with your mom, I replied casually. But, you just said, we're home, like this is your house. Isn't that a little weird? I couldn't hold back my frustration anymore. Seriously, it's being rude to just barge in and demand food, and the fact that you've been raiding our home when we're not around, that really ticks me off. Bonnie scoffed, acting all high and mighty. Don't forget your place. You're only here because of my brother. How dare you talk to me like that? If you've got time to argue, you've got time to start cooking. I was speechless. Virginia looked completely defeated. Bonnie didn't care. She went straight to the fridge, grabbed whatever she wanted, and even walked out with a bag full of groceries like it was her right. Familiarity shouldn't be an excuse for disrespect. That day, I realized Bonnie and Malachi had no concept of boundaries. The only silver lining, at least with me there, they didn't ask for money. That night, when Wesley got home, I told him everything. He was furious. That's it, he said, his face dark with anger. I'm putting an end to this. They're not going to walk all over us anymore. Virginia kept apologizing. I'm so sorry for all the trouble. This isn't your fault, I reassured her. We spent the evening discussing our next steps, and after that day, Wesley followed through. He put his foot down, and the uninvited visit stopped. Virginia slowly returned to her usual self. Just when I thought we could finally go back to our peaceful life, everything came crashing down. A week later, I was at work when my phone rang. All right, I'm heading there now, I said, my mind going blank. Wesley had collapsed at work, clutching his chest. By the time his co-workers got him to the hospital, he was already unconscious. They had performed chest compressions, but my hands were shaking as I called Virginia. Virginia, it's bad, Wesley. Wesley, she cut in, her voice sharp with worry. I'm getting a cab right now. I'll meet you there. We arrived at the hospital separately, but rushed in together. But by then, it was too late. He was in cardiac arrest when he arrived, the doctor explained. We did everything we could, but I'm so sorry. Wesley had died of a sudden heart attack. Virginia and I were in shock. He looked so peaceful, like he was just taking a nap, like he'd wake up any moment and say, "Good morning, what's for breakfast?" The funeral was a blur. His co-workers, friends, and acquaintances came to pay their respects. The outpouring of love made it clear how much he had touched people's lives. Everything happened so fast Virginia and I barely had time to grieve. His last checkup was fine, I sobbed. If only I'd paid more attention to his health, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Virginia shook her head. Jasmine, you did everything you could. Don't blame yourself. We leaned on each other for support. I took a break from work, staying home to process my grief. But then just a month after Wesley's passing, something unbelievable happened. The doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Bonnie and Malachi standing there. Bonnie sneered at me. Excuse me, why is this stranger still here? I blinked, not understanding. What? This is ridiculous. Are you planning to mooch off us? Leave the money and get out, she snapped. I was too shocked to respond. Then Malachi added coldly, You're not thinking of staying here, are you? You and Virginia aren't even related. Only blood families should live together, so pack up and go. And then, To my utter disbelief, a moving truck pulled up. Bonnie clapped her hands together, grinning. Well, we're moving in, just as family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband had just died, and instead of offering support, they were trying to kick me out of my own home. Calling me a leech, an outsider. I'd had enough. Arguing with them was pointless. They weren't worth it. I silently went to my room to pack. As I folded my clothes, Bonnie stood in the doorway, smirking. Feeling blue. Sucks to be a widow, huh? But you're young, you'll figure something out. I ignored her. Without another word, I walked out of that house and straight to the real estate agent. Bonnie and Malachi thought they had won. They thought they had taken everything from me. But what they didn't know, what they never even considered, was that I had planned for this moment. The house was in my name. There was no mortgage, no loose ends. So I put it up for sale. Bonnie and Malachi had expected to live off Virginia's savings, but I wasn't about to let that happen. Because even if we weren't blood, Virginia and I were family. And I would make sure she was free of them. Forever. What is a stranger doing here? My sister-in-law sneered as she stepped over the threshold of my home, her husband right behind her. Her eyes flashed with disdain. Are you trying to leech off us? Just take the money and get out, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. I stood there, stunned. You don't actually think you're staying here, do you? Her husband added coolly. You and Virginia are practically strangers. Only blood relatives should live together, so leave as soon as possible. They didn't care about anything except forcing me out. The insults came one after another, calling me a leech, an outsider. I'd had enough. Ignoring their cruel words and avoiding their piercing stares, I silently gathered my belongings and walked out. My name is Jasmine. I'm 35, a working housewife, and I live a peaceful life with my husband, Wesley, and my mother-in-law, Virginia. Marriage had never been a priority for me, but when I finally agreed to it, one condition was clear: I would continue working. Thankfully, Wesley was incredibly supportive. He always put me first. I knew that his father had passed away when Wesley was just starting middle school, leaving Virginia to raise both him and his sister on her own. Wesley worried about her living alone, though he never voiced it out loud. I did. Virginia, what do you think about moving in with us? I asked her one day. I'll be at work during the day, so you'll still have your alone time. And isn't food always better when there are more people? Virginia's face lit up. Really? To be honest, living alone has been getting lonely, she admitted with a small smile. And just like that, we made the decision. None of our current places were suitable for 3 people, so we took the leap, bought a new house, and started our life together. We arranged everything so Virginia would be comfortable. Her room was on the first floor, since her legs weren't as strong anymore, while Wesley and I took the second floor. To my surprise, living with her was easier than I'd imagined. She even taught me how to cook and helped with cleaning, something I was never particularly good at. Virginia, you don't have to cook for us every day, I told her one evening. Don't push yourself too hard. We're going to be living like this for a long time, and I don't want you to burn out. She shook her head. Nonsense. If I don't contribute, I'd feel like a freeloader. I can't stand that. Our home was always lively, filled with warmth and laughter. Wesley had initially worried about potential conflicts between his wife and his mother, but seeing how well we got along, he could focus on work without a care. Jasmine, thank you for being so good to my mom, he told me one evening. I'll work even harder to make you happy. I already have everything I need, I replied, smiling. You and Virginia are my happiness. If I get any greedier, I might jinx it. I wished for our peaceful days to last forever. But they didn't. About 6 months after we started living together, I noticed something was off with Virginia. She seemed troubled, distant. Is something wrong, Virginia? I asked gently. If something's bothering you, I'm here to listen. She hesitated, but eventually sighed. Bonnie and Malachi have been coming by almost every day, she admitted. They say they're short on cash, so they take money from my purse and raid the fridge. They act like this house is theirs. My stomach dropped. What? Apparently, My sister-in-law and her husband had been making themselves comfortable in our home, while Wesley and I were at work. I had only met Bonnie a couple of times since before the wedding, and again on the big day itself. I still remember the way she had looked me up and down, scrutinizing me like I was a bad purchase. "So this is Wesley's type," she had scoffed. "I never would have guessed. She's so plain, isn't she? Just blends into the background. If I were a guy, I wouldn't even give her a second glance." She had said it so casually, as if I weren't even standing there. Wesley had mentioned his sister was a bit wild, but I hadn't expected this. Despite being in her 40s, Bonnie didn't have a steady job. She did as she pleased, unconcerned with responsibility. Virginia sighed. "She's always been this way. Even when I scolded her, she never listened. If this is because of how I raised her, then I take full responsibility." "No, Virginia," I reassured her. "It's not your fault. Adults are responsible for their own actions. It's wrong to make excuses for selfish behavior." Wesley, who had been listening, exhaled sharply. "So she's still causing trouble," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "I really thought marriage would settle her down, but clearly, it's only made her worse." From what I'd heard, Bonnie's husband, Malachi, wasn't much better. He preferred an easygoing lifestyle, taking on odd jobs when he felt like it. And now, they were leeching off Virginia, off us. Something had to be done.